It is Locked On Jazz for the 16th of April, a live show edition today. We'll be bringing you some thoughts on what the news from the LA mayor about no sporting events or concerts until 2021 means. We'll pretend the playoffs are starting on Saturday, and we'll take your questions. It should be a fun one. It's a live edition of Locked On Jazz. Pow! How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. I asked you earlier this week if we could restart the Daily Devar. The Daily Devar, if you recall, was something we did a few years ago where you emailed me and reminded you like your favorite moment of what it made for you to be a Jazz fan. And I got one from Bridger Beal. So let's start today's show with a Daily Devar. I just wanted to share a quick note on why I became a Jazz fan. Wrote Bridger, growing up, my great-grandmother Virginia lived in the basement of my grandparents' house where we would visit each week for dinner. Virginia was the biggest Jazz fan I know and watched every game on TV for as long as I could remember. I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure she watched every single game for at least 10 years. My cousin and I remember watching Jazz games with her as a kid, which is where we learned to cheer Mehmet Okur, Andre Karolinko, Matt Harpring, Carlos Boozer, Darren Williams. And as she got older, we all cheered even harder for the Jazz in hopes that great-grandma would be able to see a finals win before she passed away. My great-grandmother taught me not just to be a Jazz fan, but how to be a respectful one. We watched games with Grandma. We were never allowed to complain about a foul call or boo the other team. I also learned to appreciate players who's excelled due to extraordinary effort rather than pure ability. I remember being a huge Harpring fan as a kid because he worked so hard on the floor, and this is why I'm such a big fan now of players such as Joe Ingles, Royce O'Neal, and even Rudy Gobert. If you read this, thank you so much for your continued effort on the podcast. I listen daily. Can't tell you how much I look forward to any new insights, especially in today's world. I also listen to Locked On NBA, Locked On NFL, Dallas Cowboys, Boston Red Sox. So thank you very much to you, Bridger, for all of your time listening to the shows and supporting the podcast network. All right, so email me at dlock09@gmail.com with your daily Devars. That would be I would love that. That would be a fabulous thing for you to do, and I would greatly appreciate it. We are coming to you live. I got a bunch of things I want to touch on, and then I want to take a bunch of your thoughts and comments and have some togetherness and do all that kind of things. Yes, I have way too much hair, like all of us do. Yes, I'm wearing T-shirts and Jazz sweats every day, like all of us do. I think we're all kind of at the same level of that. Hey, that's so cool. I just got TK Simmons says, just used Intercap lending. Awesome experience. Steve Carter is the best. That is certainly true. So thanks. We're live on Instagram at DLock09 as well as all the other places. I was hoping that the chat room, I hope I don't screw up everything. I'm going to try something here and see. Well, if I do that, I'll bet you I lose the feed. I don't want to do that. The chat room, Restream has this ability on chats to be able to pull the chats up on the screen, which is really cool. Unfortunately, I can't actually get that to come up right now. So that's it's not quite sinking in the way it usually does. So hopefully it'll come up and then I can plug the questions into the live broadcast and all that. I wanted to touch on a few things. The LA mayor came out the other day and yesterday and said that they don't expect to have live sporting events or live concerts in their city until 2021. I actually think that there's an interesting impact on this on the NBA side of things. Now, let's be clear on all these things. All we're doing is speculating. We don't have any idea on any of these things. So, here's what I think this might mean, and I think it's interesting. I actually think it buys Adam Silver and the NBA a bunch of time, because when you're looking at the various things you want to do as the NBA, one of them I think is they'd like to have a regular season as soon as possible. By the way, special hello to friend Jordan Schultz, host of CJ McCollum's Pull-Up Podcast. Also works at ESPN, does a bunch of stuff. Just checked in with a thumbs up on the podcast. He's so tired of me telling stories about me remembering him when he was 17 years old that I won't do that again. So I promise. But anyway, here's what I thought the announcement from the LA mayor means. I think it buys the NBA time. Now, maybe I'm just being really optimistic on this, but my thought on this is that if you're Adam Silver and you're the NBA owners, this 1920 season's a mess, right? Your goal now is to get to 70 regular season games, get your regional TV money somehow, get a playoffs, and get a champion. Okay, that would be great. But what you really, really, really want is for the 2020 and 2021 season to get you back to some level of normalcy so that you can have your league as its greatest level. Now, our world may be different, right? Like, there's a chance that 80-year-olds aren't going to sporting events anymore. There's a chance that people with health issues, predisposed health issues, have to change the way they live until we have a vaccine. There's a million things, and I'm not a doctor. I mean, we're all experts now, right? Because we sit around all night and read this stuff, and I've decided I think white papers and 15-page documents out of the White House that are leaked by something about their mitigation are actually interesting now. I found myself reading the New England Journal of Medicine all night last night. Like, the world is seriously, get me a sporting event now, please get me something that I can watch so I'm not reading the New England Journal of Medicine. Holy smokes, do I need something? Anyway, my point on this is that if we know that we're not having fans in the crowd until 2021 at the Staples Center, then we don't need to start the NBA season until December 25th or so of 2020. And if that's the case, then I'm Adam Silver, and I would say I'm looking at this and backing it up and saying, oh, wait a sec. Okay, I now know that my goal is to have the 2021 season be somewhat normal, or as normal as we can have in whatever this world is. And then from there, be able to take it to the next level, which is to be able to I might have just pushed the wrong button. We'll see what happens. Might take it to the next level, which from there is to decide to have a season from, if I back it up to right here, say, okay, well, then I actually don't need to start till July. I can finish the regular season by July 20th. I can get the playoffs started by August 1. I get the playoffs done August 29th, and we're not starting again until December 25th, so then our guys get a few months off. That's actually what jumped out to me a little bit about that, is that I actually, trying to be an optimist, think it buys the NBA a little bit of time. So I'm not sure if that's entirely true, but it's at least a thought and an idea to how that might impact things. The playoffs are starting, and I do a fun little exercise. The playoffs will start. I've always done this exercise to try to look at the playoffs. And I'm going to do it briefly today. We'll do it longer tomorrow. So what I always do is I go through like regular season basketball is one thing. Playoffs, I go through the lineups of every team. And I decide, like, okay, they're only playing these 9 guys. So what are thanks to Cleaning the Glass, this is really easy. What are the plus minus of that team if you're only playing those 9 guys? Okay. And the Lakers come in at plus 11 per 100 possessions. The Clippers come in at plus 13 per 100 possessions. The third best team in the West comes in as the Dallas Mavericks at plus 9 per 100 possessions. Then the Jazz at plus 8. The Thunder at plus 7. And then the Rockets at plus 6 and the Nuggets at plus 3. I think that's at least interesting. Okay. Quick note. I want to get to all your questions and things. I'll build back on that in a second. If you have left me a message in the chat room, on any of the chat rooms, I had to refresh the chat rooms. So please resend your message to me if you were sending it through YouTube, Twitch, Facebook. If you're on Instagram, I still have them. But I'm going to get to your questions and your comments and take your questions next as we continue. So I appreciate it if you're on Twitch, Facebook, Periscope, YouTube, on Locked On Sports or Locked On Live. I need you to resend me your questions. That would make me happy. So thank you very much for doing that. See, like there, right now, I just asked you to do it on the video screen as well. I should say, actually, to resubmit. Today's show is brought to you, ironically enough, in part by Intercap Lending. We had the little message earlier on Instagram from our guy, I think it was Simmons, saying, hey, I used Intercap. They're incredible. Steve Carter's amazing. And right now might be the right time. Right now might be the time where all of us could probably like a mortgage payment that's a few $100s less than they just were. There's a chance that a lot of us have a revenue stream that's a little different than it once was. So Intercap Lending can help us out of that. I love the people at Intercap because I remember when I called Brock Worthen at the beginning of this whole thing and said, hey, what do you think? What do you want messaging wise? He's like, my messaging is to go help people. He didn't want anything about Intercap, which tells you who they are. Josh Romney brought Intercap back to Utah. They're a 40-year lending company. They've got a great track record. Their growth is just remarkable right now because they get deals done. Our guy is Steve Carter. He is the best. I love Steve Carter. As a person, I've gotten to know him also, but when he was my lender, it was amazing. Call Steve, 385-800-8528. That's 385-800-8528. Intercap Lending, NMLS number 190465. But all the meetings and stuff, nope. They actually are ahead of the curve. Intercap Lending in the App Store. They can pre-qualify you through the App Store if you're doing something where you have to buy a house. If you just want to, or if you're doing a refi, you can do the same thing. They'll close the loan. They'll close it on time. They'll communicate through the app. They can do all the appraisal items and things of that nature without having contact. They are actually one of these people that's really nimble and really available to do great stuff right now. So that's Intercap Lending. Steve Carter's number again is 385-800-8528. 385-800-8528. Interesting story taking place today in the NBA. And that is that Jalen Green, who's the number one recruit for the next year, is going to go into the G League protocol. Also, five-star prospect Isaiah Todd has decommitted from Michigan and expected to sign a G League deal as well. So something really interesting is taking place here. One is, and honestly, we just had to deal with this decision in our house as my son is one of these unfortunate seniors in high school. I think there's great doubt of whether colleges are starting in the fall. And if colleges are starting in the fall, these top-level players are going to never go to college. They're just going to come out in the next draft, so they're all going to the G League right now. This also is going to open up the brand new G League system, which was created largely because Australia started to spend a bunch of money. This is the beginning of the end of the one and done, but it's also this pro pathway initiative that they've worked on. This is actually happening right as we're doing the show today. It's a pretty interesting story to see taking place. All right, thank you all for resubmitting in the chat room. If the playoffs had started, how far would we get? Well, we would have opened with the Thunder. My numbers say we probably beat the Thunder. And then the next one would have been the Lakers. And I don't think that we could beat the Lakers. I think their length and their defense would just be too much for us. But unlike the previous years, I do feel as though there's a pathway for us to win that series, in which is we're the best shooting team in the league. If we had been able to get catch and shoots, it's interesting to kind of think back. The last practice the Jazz had was this really big emphasis on catch and shoot threes and trying to get shots off and take more threes and increase, because that was the route by which the Jazz could upset the Lakers, the Clippers. I remember watching the Laker-Clipper game and seeing it take place and thinking, my gosh, how could we ever compete with either of these teams? And then when I started thinking about it, you know what? The answer is we outshoot them. The answer is that we're just that good a shooting team that we outshoot them, that we have the best defensive player in the world. We play good enough defense. We were about an average defensive team, or a little above, and that we just are good enough offensively to scare someone like the Lakers. Now, I think the Lakers defense would have given us problems, and their length would have made it hard for us, and we would have struggled in that regard. But this roster was built in a manner that gave us an opportunity to be able to do things and beat people. Whereas in years past, honestly, I didn't feel that way about any of our opportunities, because I just didn't think we had enough offensive firepower that even if we had a good defensive game, I didn't think we could catch them. So, anyone trying to knock off the Lakers or the Clippers would be interesting. Dallas, to me, really would have been the team to watch. Dallas would have played the Clippers in the opening round. If the Rockets had continued their slide and the Mavericks had gotten to 6, I would have taken them to beat the Nuggets. I think the Mavericks were kind of the most unsung team with an elite level offense that in the playoffs would have been very hard to guard. Special shout out to Travis Rust, who I just saw on our Instagram feed. Special shout out to Morgan, maybe the biggest Jazz fan out there. Always very supportive of everything I do. I super appreciate that. All right, let me go to the Instagram questions and see if I've got anything available here on the question level of things. Give me 1 second as I scan this. A lot of questions of what happens to the 2020 season as I opened up talking about the 2021 season. Also, Lee on Periscope. Do you think Dr. Fauci's comments open the door for a possible resume of the NBA season? The route to resume the NBA season, I think we know what it is. If it's feasible, we'll see. I thought Mike Trout was really interesting on it as well, the great baseball player. So the route is clear. The route is the Vegas bubble. And, I'll find out some more about this for tomorrow's show. The G League has done this. The G League has put on a 3-day event at Mandalay Bay in which there's no fans, there's just scouts. I believe Mandalay Bay is connected to the Lexor. Like the system is there. You put all the players in those 2 hotels. Those hotels all are shut down right now, so you reserve them. Maybe you buy out all of those 2 hotels so nobody else can be in there. You're able to quarantine, you really got to quarantine and social distance the players. You don't have like that bubble that you're trying to build, this kind of, boy in the bubble, but league in the bubble. That's actually feasible in Vegas. I think the NBA, if I had to make a bet right now, I'm most hopeful to the NBA starting. Well, evidently the PGA Tour is starting first, so give them that. I'm most hopeful for the NBA. Next, I think baseball in Arizona could pull it off. I'm most concerned about college. I'm very, very doubtful right now on whether we have a college football season. I don't know anything, but the minute a school decides to do online classes in the fall, can you really force the football team to then come to the university and play? And I think it's going to be super interesting to see when we have fans and stands again. And what that means. And, this is very complicated stuff. And we're talking about things that are going to take place in July and August, and we're in April, and there's just so much that can change. And we're in an immediate reaction society, not gratification with that too, but reaction society where every time we want news every minute to form our next opinion. And really the best way is over a period of time to take the news. And actually, I think the best way to know what's going on is to go back and read everything from the very beginning. It's why I was actually being a freak and reading the New England Journal of Medicine and getting the initial reports and reading some of the early stuff that was written on all of this that I think was some of the most informative before we got into whatever battles we're in right now that are just stupid. I actually think some of that stuff's the most informative. I'm not sure. I think there's that many more things coming out. There was an Atlantic article, not Athletic, Atlantic article about like how we resume life that was written about 3 weeks ago that I think's fabulous. And I think I don't think we're actually getting new information every day that's actually useful, frankly. And so I think we're And I don't actually feel like there's anything happening every day that we didn't know was coming. Like, this is the whole point of this, was there was going to be this surge. The hospitals were going to be affected. We were trying to flatten the curve so that the hospitals weren't going to cause problems, for a social distance to cut down some of the cases. The curve, by definition, is as long as the backside is the front side. Like, there's still a lot to it. And then we're going to get into some weird concept of when society is no longer protecting those at-risk people because the risk has been mitigated to enough of a level that now it's on them to mitigate their own risk. Like, that's going to be the really weird moment of this whole time. So, anyway, there's a lot of stuff there. From Jerry Berry, or Jerry Bear, or Jer Bear. Do you think the playoff teams at least will compete with no fans maybe in May or June? Again, you're asking me questions that I usually really pride myself on having background knowledge and understanding, and I don't have any background knowledge or understanding here. So I would tell you that I think that my guess is I think we play some sort of basketball again this year. I think it happens in Las Vegas. I think it happens in a bubble, and I don't think it happens in May or June. That's my guess. Do you think that – this is a great question from Matthew. Do you think that the NBA Players Association and big-name players like LeBron, CP3, Harden, and Durant will give up their vacation time? I do. I think actually in this case, they will see a larger calling to the value that they bring to society and see that. Also, I thought Mike Trout's comment about the fact that, hey, you're asking, in the case of the baseball, you're asking them to go be quarantined for like 18, 19 months, or you're at 8 for 7 or 8 months, and you're asking basketball players to do it for a very short period of time. And so I think that when you consider that, it's much easier for basketball to do this. What you're asking the baseball players to do in Phoenix gets to be a pretty big ask if you're asking them really to take the whole season. Good friend of mine, Courtney, says Cal most likely not taking classes in the fall. All right, let's address that for a second, because that actually is probably the biggest news note that we're actually having that's coming out, is like this concept of colleges not starting in the fall, and the impact of that on both the NBA and the G League is the news coming out today. Today's show is brought to you in part by Murdoch Hyundai. Have you caught what's going on in the car world right now? Here's what Murdoch Hyundai is doing. I know this because we're literally probably going to buy a car. We weren't planning on it, but it's like ridiculous. Okay, no payments until, like, if you buy today, I don't think you have a payment till January 15th. You have 0% for 84 months or something crazy. And they have killer deals going on. Murdoch has put in the Murdoch Sure program, so you can do all your shopping online. They can bring the car to you. You can do your test drive if you want to do it there. And then the whole deal's done. Easy in and out online. I was talking to Blake from a business standpoint. I hope he doesn't mind me sharing this. I had to talk to him because the car was underneath all those golf shots, and I wanted to make sure he was, if you've seen the quarantine golf shots. He says it's been interesting. They've distanced their workers. They're still showing cars. They're actually like the fourth or fifth selling Hyundai dealership in the country right now. And they're finding a way to make this work. All the cars are sanitized. All the cars are being cleaned extra. It's a different world, but to the credit of the Murdochs, they're actually moving forward and figuring out what they can do to make this world work for them and work for the customer. It's pretty interesting stuff, and the deals are amazing. It's Murdoch Hyundai, located in Linden, Logan, and also at 4646 South State Street. If you are interested in buying a car, email me at dlock09@gmail.com. We'll still give you the same VIP service, and we'll get it to you across. Here's what's so interesting about this idea of fall. I hadn't thought about this. If classes aren't starting in the fall, the basketball players, the best basketball players in the country, aren't going to go to college next year. So what they're going to do is do this G League portal, or they're going to go move straight into the G League, and we're going to have our first generation players who never play college, and they play G League or go to Australia if that's league is running instead. This is going to have an enormous impact. I also think just the fascinating one for you to start to chew on is one of our listeners, Courtney, says Cal's likely going to start online in the fall. Well, okay, are we going to just openly admit at that point that football's so important and makes so much money and is so necessary that we're actually going to bring all our football players back onto campus because we actually have to have that TV revenue from football and have them be the only people on campus? Is that where we're going? It's an incredible, maybe we are. But let's say you don't. And let's say Vanderbilt decides we're not bringing kids on class, and Alabama and Auburn and Georgia are like, no, we got to have football. And LSU is like, no, we're making $70 million. We got to have football. What do you do? Does Vanderbilt just forfeit every game? It's hard to figure out. Andy says, aside from the rumors of the rift, isn't Rudy's looming Supermax deal a bigger problem for the future? Do we want to invest that kind of money into that position, especially the way it's trending away from bigs like him? All right, I'm not sure. I might be totally wrong on this. I do not buy the premise of the final line of that. I don't believe that the game is trending away from bigs like Rudy. I believe the game might be trending away from bigs, but the game is trending toward rim defense. That's what Milwaukee's doing. Milwaukee's defending the rim. Toronto's defending the rim, which is making getting on top of the rim even more valuable than it's ever been before. And there's very, very few players who can do it. So if you're a big that does not defend the rim, and if you're a big that can't get on top of the rim or get to the rim, you're right. Your value is decreasing. And we're shooting threes like, Kristaps Porzingis or things like that. And the more we spread out, the harder it is to defend the rim. And there's going to be what Milwaukee's decided is that the game has spread out so far, we no longer can guard both. So therefore, we're just defending the rim. The Jazz are the only team in the NBA in the top 5 of defending the rim and denying threes. That's because of Rudy. I have a hard time seeing that his value is decreasing. He's taken the third most amount of shots of any player in the league in the restricted area this year. Not third highest percentage, number 1 highest percentage. Third highest amount. More than LeBron, more than Russell, more than James. That's a skill. He can get shots at the rim. I'm having a hard time with the whole premise that Rudy's value is somehow being decreased right now. The game is making it more difficult for a big to impact the game. Correct. But we have one of the elite bigs that actually can impact the game. That's my take on this. I might be wrong, but that's where I am on this. That's the way I look at this, is exactly that. It's more difficult. Teams can spread him out. Sure, we are now having games where Rudy has to guard at 24 feet and people are getting behind Rudy and he can't defend the rim as much. All right, well, maybe there's going to have to be an adjust. What does Milwaukee do about that? Because Milwaukee's allowing 28% of the shots at the rim. So how do we adjust to that? At some point, maybe you're deciding you're allowing some of these threes. Maybe you're playing more zone and Rudy's more important. I'm not entirely sure. But I'm having a hard time. If we could trade one starter off the Jazz for Stockton or Malone, who would it be? Well, you probably slide Bojan to the 3, and then you're trading Royce for Malone, I would think. Malone's would adjust his game. I don't have any problem. It's fun. I don't have an answer for you, but it's a fun question. Has there been any discussion about Donovan's multiple weeks of being sick earlier in the year as a potential indicator for when he first contacted the virus instead of assumption he got it from Rudy? There's not, but I think everyone's kind of clear on the idea that no one knows who gave it to whom. Maybe not, but I think everyone's kind of moved past that and has an understanding that we don't know what took place and how it took place. From Golden Griff on Instagram, what's happening with Rudy and Donovan? They're in quarantine. They're all in the same world we are. Donovan's in New York. Rudy's here in Utah. Everyone's stay at home. That's what's wacky about this, guys. This is the point to me on this. And that is on the Rudy Donovan thing. Their relationship is based on shared brilliance on the court. Okay? Like, they're not going to dinner together. They do occasionally, but they're not like best friends. Like, that's fine. Stockton Malone weren't either. John had his minivan packed and was leaving like before lock or clear out every year. Like, that's just how, like, they're not best friends. They wouldn't talk all offseason very rarely. They're probably closer today than they were then. Their relationship is based on shared brilliance on the floor. And they cannot have that right now because of the world we live in. And that makes it difficult for them, for everyone. So I think that's I have a feeling Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid are like calling each other every day either. Right? Like, I just, like, these guys are teammates. They're not and they can't be teammates right now. Is there enough room in Vegas for all 30 teams to play games? Yeah, Colby, because of the fact that you do not have to have fans, you actually take like the big conference centers and conference rooms at the Mandalay Bay and turn them into 2 basketball courts, and you can get 8 games in a day. If you put in 3, you can get every team to play in a day. So I don't think you'd have to have half the team somewhere else. You can do every team in Vegas. They've done the G League Showcase with 28 teams, I think it is, and got all their games in. So it'll be interesting. Tom Jones, in I think response to my college, said this event to definitely pull the curtain back on finances. Brandon White says you're the one that loves bigs that stay out and brick threes, I guess. Doug, do you think Donovan is more important for the Jazz to resign long-term? You're asking, I'm assuming that more important. You didn't actually clarify more important than what. I think they're both incredibly important. We were about to be on the verge of going into I think the second round of the playoffs for the, 4th time in 5 years? That's pretty incredible. It's really incredible. Does Mike Conley bring home the title tonight? I don't know. That was tough to watch. Yeah, because Mike Conley is being able to do the right-hand, left-hand thing when he's completely ambidextrous. And I think that there's I think Mike Conley's got to be the favorite because Mike Conley's doing all this fun stuff where he decides to do right hand, left hand, offhand stuff, and he has no offhand, which is really brilliant. I've got the whole question. I saw Spence and Andy Larson building this, that the Jazz silence on Rudy means they've left him out in the cold. I have just no idea what people think they're supposed to say. Someone craft that statement for me of what you think that is that they're supposed to be saying this whole time. I think they've said they hope they get well. They're supportive of him. Like, what is it? And what precedent are you setting about commenting? I'm actually lost on this one. And I like I'm a little, I'm not sure what people are talking about on that one. So I would need a little help on what somebody thinks that comment. Like, before you ask for something, tell me what you think it's supposed to be. Is Rudy the best center in Utah Jazz history? Absolutely. Unquestionably. That's from our Instagram, and we'll end on that. Thanks very much for tuning into the live show. Super appreciate you. Hope you're doing well. We'll have a regular Locked On Jazz tomorrow. Locked On NBA today. Ben Golliver and I talked about The Last Dance coming out on Sunday. Ben's seen it. We talked about that. I forgot to tell my great Michael Jordan story. Maybe I'll tell it tomorrow on Locked On Jazz and give it to you guys in special. Thanks so much for tuning in. Big audience numbers today. Really appreciate you stopping by. Hope everyone's well, healthy, social distancing. I will share this with you. I don't know if this helps. This is my final thought. I was having a hard time understanding what we're doing and why we're doing. I still am. I still get frustrated. I think the best way to think about this is our World War III. Somebody called it World War C for coronavirus. If you go back and look at the generation in 1910s that dealt with World War I, they had to change every single thing they were doing as a society. And they had to go through that and suddenly take the time to change who they were, what they did, how they lived, and help America through it. And we go to World War II, we had to do the same thing, right? Everybody changed their jobs. We had production. People went to war. We're never per se going to war in mass like we did in World War I and World War II. This is our version of it, I think. This is the modern world having to change their lifestyle, change what we're doing to try to help the world and our society survive through that. That has been the helpful thought I have of what we're going through and to keep me sane. Hope that helps you. Have a great one.